Okay, I would like to call our regular Board of Education meeting to order. This evening, leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance are two of our three fabulous social workers in the district, Samantha Perry and Jolie Wachinski. If you guys will come up. They're so excited to be able to do this for us. You can tell. Come right up and turn around and face the camera. Oh yeah, it's serious business. Okay. Whenever you're ready, we're ready, ladies. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Okay, our mission statement.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education and empower students to be successful in the local community. Roll call. Sherry? Here. Angie? Here. Sandra?
Here.
Kyle?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
Margaret?
Here.
And I am here. We have one.
Thank you. Next, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation. Support.
Sherry, was that you? It has been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Walmsley?
We received two resignation letters. Mrs. Holt, actually at the last board meeting, you hired her, and she resigned before she started. She got another position with a few more hours, et cetera, to meet her personal needs. And then sadly, Mr. Estrada, food service director, will be leaving us April 10th. He took a position in another district, and a position he couldn't pass up. Great opportunity for him, so I wish him the best. And then finally, Mr. Karam, the freshman baseball coach.
Okay, any other questions? And I just want to add on behalf of the board a thank you to Mr. Estrada for the work that he has done in our food service department. Has been outstanding. We've been fortunate to have him work for us. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is our True Blue moment. It is a time where we like to acknowledge great things that happen in our district, and we are honoring our school social workers this evening. So if they would like to come up, Mr. Walmsley is going to talk about you a little bit. And then board, when he's finished, we have certificates. We can come up.
Well, last week was National School Social Worker Week. It's actually almost a year to the date that we were up here with two social workers hiring the third one. This is Wachinski. School social workers play a vital part in what our students and families receive as services for Richmond Community Schools. I could not be more grateful for the work that our three social workers do for our district. They are extremely dedicated, give countless hours of their attention, as do many staff, but in honoring these three. They spend a lot of their time, invest their time in trying to be advocates for the students, not only educationally, but also their social welfare and what they need beyond the walls of the school. They are all very vital components of our Backpacks and a Blessing program and identifying families in need that we help on the weekends and provide food and resources. This week's theme is titled, or this year's theme, is Beacon of Hope, School Social Workers Lighting the Way. And that couldn't be more relevant to our three social workers who are here. Two of them are here today. Mrs. Laratunda emailed me. She was out sick today and could not be here. So it's with great pleasure that we can take a moment and honor these two ladies and Mrs. Laratunda. Board, if they come up, I will acknowledge their names and shake their hands. So on behalf of the students, the staff, I appreciate everything you do, and I know the administrators do, because you make their job much more easy too, with the work you do, and ultimately the students. You provide countless hours of support. So, as I said, Mrs. Laratunda was not here today. She's our lead social worker, and she does do a lot of mentoring with our two, and has been an advocate. I think she sat on the interviews for both years. she has a very high standard, and she wants to make sure. And she was very successful with that. So, Samantha Perry, she's at the elementary school. Thank you very much. And Jolie Rachinski is at the middle school. And again, I can't thank you for enough. We are a very lucky district to have a full-time social worker in each one of our buildings. So that is a resource that, yeah, thank you for all.
Oops, I'm sorry. Next, we're moving on to our presentations. First one, merit pay allocation for fiscal year 2020.
Last August, you approved a resolution, which is in your packet, draft of resolution that we had last August, to be in compliance with Section 1250 of the revised school code, which states that a school district shall implement and maintain a method of compensation for its teachers and school administrators that include job performance and job accomplishments, as well as a significant factor in determining compensation and additional compensation. It also speaks to the assessment has to be rigorous, fair, and transparent, both for the teacher and the administrator, and at least partially based on student growth data as assessments and other objective criteria. So with that passage of the resolution, I had recommended a formula that we use to calculate merit pay based on the final evaluations for the administrators and the teachers. This should look familiar to you, with the exception of Mrs. Fortuna, because she was not on the board at the time. I don't remember if you were at the board meeting, so forgive me that day. But this is a calculation, and at the time I was using a figure of an allocation that the board would set aside, and then based on the final evaluations that would come in the end of May, June, the allocation then would be calculated, and then individuals within the organization who are teachers and administrators would then get a certain percentage. And the calculation is 4 times the effective teacher. So for instance, in this example, this is the example I used last August, is whatever the board decides to allocate as the I call it pot of dollars to be allocated for merit pay. An example I used in last August was $20,000. That will need to be determined by the board as well as moving forward, which we're going to talk in the budget process a little later. This is the assumption I'm making right now, is that the board will allocate $20,000, which will then appear in the budget amendment 3, which will come to the board in June. So the way this works is you put the dollar value in there, let's say in this case $20,000, and I'm going to see if I can increase this a little. So we have 85 teachers, and I'm not talking FTs or 85 bodies and 8 administrators. So if I assume, again, this is just for hypothetical, that the final evaluations came out where we had 6 effective administrators, 55 effective teachers, 2 highly effective administrators, and 30 highly effective teachers. The calculation that they would get was for every effective evaluation, they would receive an allocation of a total of $105.82, and for highly effective, it would be for $423.28. Now, this calculation is based on the total dollar value that's allocated. So, for instance, we need to back out of there the FICA and the retirement costs that we would pay. Or as a board, you could say the $20,000 plus, in addition, we have to pay the FICA and retirement. So I was looking at a total dollar value that it would cost. Again, if you assume that there were, again, if we assume everybody was highly effective, again, just in this model, there are 8 administrators and 85 teachers. but it's about $200 that they would get on a high effect, so it changes on it. Again, my calculation's off, because I don't have the numbers adding up. But the formula is 4 times the amount of what an effective teacher would get. So the total, when you add up all the allocations, would be for whatever the board determines to be the set aside. So, we talked about this in August. We are required by law to issue merit pay. How we do it is up to the board and the discretion. So the recommendation I would make would be just allocate $20,000 aside for merit pay, and then once the final evaluations are in, then we would calculate who's the affected, how much effective teachers get, administrators, and how much highly effective then teachers and administrators get.
And isn't that what I know Sandy wasn't with us, but isn't that what we decided as a board, was the $20,000 amount, correct?
We had talked about it, but we didn't put it into the budget. So if that's the dollar value everybody is comfortable, that was the value that I talked about in all the examples that I gave last August.
Right.
When we did that. So if the board is comfortable with that, then in the budget 3 that's coming to you, there'll be a line item for merit pay that we will then use for this dollar amount.
And it goes into this year's,
It goes into
in
this
the
year's.
1920
Correct.
budget.
It's based on this year's evaluation.
Right.
So most of the principals get them done right before Memorial Day. They probably meet with teachers in that week after Memorial Day-ish in the time frame. We get them in my office before they leave for the summer. So we're talking the first week of June with the target date of being paid on the June 25th pay, because we want it to be part of this year's budget rather than to carry over. Once it's in the budget, then as a line item, when we carry those expenses forward, it then stays there year after year, so the board then has the option, if they want, to adjust, raise, or lower, depending on the finances of the district.
Right, that was going to be my question.
Yep.
Each year, we would determine as we go through the budget process whether we wanted to lower it, raise it, what have you, or keep it the same, right?
Correct. Once it's in there, we typically roll the budget forward,
Right.
keeping all expenses the same, unless we make a change, such as a reduction or adding to.
Okay.
So at the next board meeting, that would just a formal action item that you allocate $20,000 for merit pay. And I would have that broken down so you have the FICA and the retirement, so you know the true cost.
And so everyone still thinks the same way, that that $20,000 figure is what we want to work with? I know it's hard for you to say, but,
Could we still discuss it, changing it?
well, now would be the time.
No, can't be changed after today.
No, now would be the time. Are you looking, do you want to do a different dollar amount?
I was just thinking if the election, if we get that extra money, if the millage passes, we could consider changing that.
I would recommend you consider change for the future. If the village passes tomorrow, those dollars are not going to be
Right.
covered till next year.
Right.
We're not going to get them this year because they'll come out in the summer tax collection,
Right.
July 1.
Okay.
So, but yes, you could look at that.
Yeah,
You can adjust it
absolutely.
in the future
Mhm.
at any time.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on, fiscal year 2021 budget discussion.
Okay, last week, when I uploaded the board packet, there was a lot of charts and graphs, and I sat kind of reflecting on this and thinking, okay, how do I make all those seem easier to understand in the big picture? Because there's a lot of variables that are going to be asked upon this board in the next couple of weeks. So I put together a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint that you have in front of you is not to the specific dollar. It's rounded up, I think, to the hundredths. So the numbers you have in the actual chart are just a little off from what the PowerPoint is, but in the big picture concept, you have the concept of what we're talking about and where we're at. Okay, so So let's talk about the budget. This will be our first conversation of many to come regarding the FY21 budget. So when we're building a budget, there are three variables that we need to take reasonable estimates and projections to put together. And those are enrollment figures or numbers of students, expenses, and revenue. So I'm going to go through each one of these, where we are to date, what known expenses we have going into next year, and what known revenue we have going into next year. So let's start with enrollment. First, I just want to make sure the board recognizes there's a difference between head count and FTE count. Head count is actual bodies, how many people are sitting in our seats. But that may not equal what we actually get paid for from the state, because we have some students that we share with other districts, some that are partial or reduced schedules. So though they are a body that's in our seats and that we are educating them and have to provide a space, we may not get a full FTE funding for them. And the FTE is what the state counts to give us our allocation for funds. When we look at the enrollment projection, there's basically three steps that we look at. And number one is we look at the projected student count, or what we have done in the last several years, in each grade level, that as of February count day, we move them to the next grade level. There's a grade 30 or an ECSE that we take, we typically in the past have taken whatever our ECSE numbers is that year, and we move that number forward for this year. There's a lot of variables, such as when an IEP is held and so forth, to determine that exact number of students. But we have a pretty good estimate that it's about the same number. And finally, the most unknown variable is the number of kindergartners we're going to welcome into our district. We have in that, in the kindergartners, we look at not only our current preschool numbers, who are 4-year-olds planning on going into kindergarten, we look at our current ECSE numbers that would be moving into kindergarten, as well as kindergarten enrollment patterns for the past several years. So for instance, when I first started here, we were basing kindergarten on about 80 students. We talked about 3 sections. We over time and moved that up to 90. Last year we were well over 100 as our projection, and this year I'm projecting to be about 105 going into next year. So when you look at this chart here, this is the FTE count for the last couple of years. The green boxes are the current counts in our district by FTE. Now, what's important to remember is that February 20th numbers are not the official audited numbers yet. We have students that we're still counting in the 30-day return window from when count day was. So if they return, we can still count. If they don't return, that number may go up and down, or go down if they don't return. You can see in the green, the third column in the green, you have the building FTE counts as of February 20th. If we move those students up a grade level, following what we just talked about, assuming the same number of ECSE, which is the grade 30, and assuming 105 kindergartners, our FTE blended count would be 1447.94, which would actually be 11 students, 11.72 down from our February count. And I just want to point out here, when you look at the difference between the 18-19, we were at 4828. Our February count was down 16 FTEs. When you look at our February count to the October 19th count, October of 2019, we were up count. This section 25 represents when students leave us, other districts can bill back to get part of the FTE funding that they educated the child versus what we educated. So last October, we lost another 3 FTEs by students leaving in the mid-year, and they moved. That represents students outside, that left to go outside of Macomb County. Macomb County does not bill back up each other's districts within the county, because it pretty much is a net neutral for all of us. Again, when you move everybody up, you assume 105 kindergartners and you assume 16 ECSE students. The blended count comes to 1447.94. 1447, which is the 11 FTEs down from the February count. Now, one of the questions that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to interject throughout the process, was by Board Member Cito. Do we have to assume those numbers? As a board, you can assume, we can assume anything. The challenge is it's got to be realistic what we think is going to be there, because if we assume too many and we come short, you got to remember, we're probably July and August already into the school year, kids are already in front of their teachers. It's much harder to reduce expenses once the school year started if we've over budgeted for staff. If we get, as we've done in the past, where we get more kids coming in towards the beginning of school, and we are interviewing towards the end of August, which we have done, it's easier to add a section to lower class sizes than to take a section away, which raises class sizes. So my recommendation is we follow the same projection numbers as we have in the past, moving kids up. There are some unknowns in this variable, such as we don't know, I know there's one house that's being currently built in the new subdivision behind the school. How many will actually be finished and people moving in? In the Lake Angeles subdivision, though, that section finishing up there. There's a lot of unknowns, and this is something we talk about every year, is the unknowns. So before I go on to the next, I just want to ask as a board, are you comfortable with the current projections the way we've done it? So we're going to base this budget, what I'm recommending is basing it on 1447.94, 1448, whatever we want to do. We're using this methodology.
Yes.
Now, would
Yes.
that possibly change with the final count, or would we have the final count in time to like change that?
Well, we're going to have an estimated count when you have to officially approve the budget. So for instance, right now,
No, wait.
we have,
Would
Wait,
it maybe change?
Wait, are you asking because that February count date isn't official yet?
Right,
Is that
well,
what you're talking, that'll come in the next few weeks?
it'll come in the next few weeks.
Right.
So before you approve, probably before May at least, we'll have that final February now count. What Pam and I have done, and we've gone through, we know the students that have left us, and we've done the calculation of the FTE that we're going to lose because they've left us. We know there's a couple students that are still waiting on that 30-day window. We're assuming they're coming back. We have some, especially if we have a reason. We know from the offices calling, we know they're coming back or something that's preventing them at the moment. But that number would then be finalized, I would say by May, at the absolute latest, that you would have that number to be shored up.
How accurate typically is that number, like in the last couple of years? How accurate is it? Has it been a good forecasting method for us? Would assume if we're continuing.
I mean, we've been doing it that way for.
Right.
We've had 2 years, particularly last year, which we had a peak. We had 58 more kids than what we've had in previous years. But we've kind of known that going in, and we were ready to add the 5th kindergarten. When we started watching, when Mr. Koshin was saying we got X number of first graders and kindergartens last year, we added that outside of the budget, knowing it was going to come in the Amendment 2. So the revenue that we received from these additional students was offset by the expenses that we had for additional staffing. It's been, in the big scheme, it's been pretty accurate. We haven't had a significant anomaly. I would say out of all the years, I would say, is this the year, Mr. Bartels, that we had the influx in the private schools coming in 5th grade?
Yes.
Or was that
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th? So we had a little higher than what we had
Anticipated.
projected in past. And there were probably some unique situations that caused it that we weren't necessarily aware of when we started this process.
Thank you.
We always have that 5th grade bubble, that 9th grade when they're coming. Mr. Castle, do you remember off the top of your head how many packets or how many of the St. Anne's, St. A's, St. Pete's families when you did the welcome 9th grade orientation?
We handed out 11.
11. So we have 11 students that aren't necessarily on the FT yet, but they may be conceptually in the in the 9th grade FTE currently that we wouldn't have counted for the previous year. When you look at the October to the February, you can see the elementary, they're not much different. It would be different if I had all of the FTEs appear in one grade level to make budgetary decisions, but they typically are spread out or sprinkled through the coursework. Second semester, this is not uncommon for your numbers to go down in 11th and particularly 12th grade because you're getting students choosing an alternative path to diploma, such as an online school or a correspondence school to when we're nearing graduation requirements, if they're not on track to graduate. When you look at the building FTE currently from February and you compare it to next year's projected, they're not dramatically different. They're within what I would say is a normal range. So keeping the same process, and again, we finalize the numbers once we have them audited. The next step is looking at known expenses. We currently have in the February 24th budget a $28,000 structural problem that we are using for fund balance. There are two known expenses or proposed expenses that would be coming into the budget. One is the contract settlement that would be later on in the board agenda that's recommended, as well as the merit pay allocation that which would be coming in next week on the or in 2 weeks on the 23rd. So right now we're at $78,000 as a structural problem. Every year we never hit that target. We're within a good percentage. If you think your own budgeting, you pay your bills for your X dollars you get in for your job, and when you pay all your bills, there's usually dollars left. But think of the same concept with the hundreds of accounts that we have. There's going to be a little left in a little of every account, because typically not everything's expended. Whether it's a supply account or maybe there was a personnel we budgeted for, but the person had some unpaid time off, but we still had the original salary budget. All that gets washed out in that final. So I fully anticipate this to be a less of a structural problem than what we have listed on this sheet. But I think it's important to realize that's our target at this moment. And again, a structural problem is just simply when the expenses exceed the revenue. We are not a deficit district. Sometimes people interchange them. They are not interchangeably. Basically, a deficit is when your expenses exceed your revenue and you have no fund balance. And you literally have to borrow money to make ends meet. For the FY 2021 budget, there are known expenses or contractual expenses that are listed here. And these are things as a board I would recommend that you, or at least make sure we keep on our radar. Number one, we have more students scheduled to go to the IAM program than we currently have this year. We have 4 more students that will be attending next year than what we currently have. So that's approximately $35,000. We have contractual obligations in a contract or a position, which if it's a 52-week position, ranging with FICA, benefit, health care, when you look at AD&D, accidental death and dismemberment, LTD, et cetera, equate to about $167,000. We currently have 5 sections of first grade. If we're assuming those students move up to second grade and we want to keep those class sizes where they're at, I'm just going to go back real quick so you can see on the enrollment. And you know this is a rough estimate, but currently first grade we are at 113 students. You're probably going to need 5 sections of second grade, otherwise those class sizes are going to be 27, 28 kids in a class, and that's a large number for second grade. Just the physical space in the classroom too. So this would assume we're going to add another teacher to address the class sizes for those grades going up. This budget also assumes the keeping 5 kindergartens and 5 first. With the kindergarten enrollment, we could always hold off on this position until after July 1 and see what our final numbers come in for kindergarten, but it would be a late reassignment of a teacher if I'm going to have to move a kindergarten or first grade teacher to a second grade. But the budget assumes, what I'm asking for the board to consider is to assume that additional class size. That position assumes a couple steps based on a bachelor's or master's, depending on where we hire the person, as well as healthcare, FICA, retirement. It's a starting point for us. It could be less if we hire someone at a bachelor's 0 grade, but sometimes we hire someone with a master's degree. The additional teacher for 6th grade, if we're adding the 2nd grade course, the 5th section, those teachers currently teaching 6th grade computers, PE, and STEAM would have to be reassigned in their schedule to pick up that 2nd grade, 5th section, and we'd have to backfill with a position for the 6th grade PE, STEAM, and music positions that are currently being taught by those teachers. Number 5
But
is
wait,
the healthcare.
wait, Brian,
Sorry.
excuse me. But you're not talking a teacher for each, a full teacher for
No,
each
no,
one
no,
of them.
no,
That's
no.
not what the
No, I'm
presentation
talking,
is.
I have, right now in the schedule, I believe it's I think it's 3rd hour for the middle school, that the teachers teach 6th grade, a 6th grade course. So I need to, if I'm pulling them out to fill the elementary special schedule, so they're just K-5, we got to backfill that. Because when you look at the enrollment, there's not a lot of, I don't anticipate reduction in sections being offered based on our current schedule. Now, as a board, if we want to, I don't know, tighten the schedule because it's pretty tight, and we could look at not running certain programs, which would raise the class sizes and some other ones, but then you're eliminating student selection and some of the student options, which is what we've been trying to keep in the schedule and promote. But no, I'm not talking a full teacher for that 6th grade. It would be, we'd have to figure out the hour of the day for that. Number 5 talks about healthcare increase. This is the one we do not know at this point, but based on our estimates, we predict a 2.65 increase in the hard cap. And the way we calculated that was we looked at the hard cap increases, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tammy, the hard cap increases over the last several years, and it's about an average of a 2.65% increase. So we are anticipating our hard cap to go up, as it does every year legislatively, and we're responsible for the insurance costs up to that hard cap. And that equates to about $32,000. Item number 6 is retirement costs, and there are 2 components of the retirement costs. There is the district responsibility, and there is what's called the UAAL, and that is what the state charges us and then turns around and gives us money to pay back to the state. The district cost is moving, it's going to be increasing 2.65%. That is a known cost for next year.
2.58.
I'm sorry, 2.58, I was looking at number 5, thank you. 2.58, so basically for every dollar we're paying, we're going to pay an additional $2.58, or for every dollar we're paying a 2.5% increase on that. So unless the state's going to put in their budget to offset that cost, we need to at least begin planning for that cost. When you look at our total payroll costs in the district, our increased amount is about $77,000 more that we're going to pay towards retirement costs. What's not figured in here, because the value is unknown, is we have an REA contract from the teachers union for the 2nd year of their contract. That should be 2021 school year, my apologies. As well as the secretarial contract expires June 30th of this year. So whatever is negotiated from a compensation perspective would be that dollar value there. And then the last item that the board to consider would be a new expense, and even before it's there, we need to begin planning for that synthetic turf replacement. I don't know if it was last meeting or the previous meeting, you approved the last meeting, you approved the synthetic turf replacement. That's about $800,000. One of the questions that Mrs. Angela asked was, could we defer that cost and maybe do more than year 2 or year 3 going on? As a board, you absolutely could make that decision. At some point, though, if you're not planning on going back to the community for a bond renewal for replacement, we need to start basically putting money in a savings account, a capital outlay project, whether it's $80,000 this year, $80,000 next year, so that when that turf is time to be replaced, the district has the money, a future board has the money. So when you add up these, we're talking a total of about $486,604. So if you take the FY 2020 Budget Amendment 3, the structural problem I went over, and you take the assumption of the new expenses on this last slide, we're at about $564,000. Now again, the unknown is the settlement of the county. Again, we haven't talked any revenue on this side, so I want to make sure these are just expenses. Other expenses the board needs to at least keep on the back of their mind. Tomorrow, if the millage enhancement is passed, there is an obligation, a contract obligation of about $17,300 that would be a new expense into next year's budget. These aren't definite, but as a board, you need it very similar to the turf replacement. You're going to need to begin thinking about bus replacement and technology replacement, because the current bond has, I believe, 4, again, going from the top of my head on this, so it could be 5, but I believe 4 buses in it. When this bond expires, the buses you bought from the 13 bond are going to be 10 years old and ready to be replaced, and there's no dollar value to replace them at that point. Again, things that I'm going to put it on your radar, think about as a board and be at least consider. All right, without talking revenue, any questions on the expenses or any new, other, or projected structural projects? We're talking about expenses.
I just got to go back to the 6th grade music, PE, and STEAM. The $10,000 amount, that is for partial FTE teacher.
Partial FTE teacher, because we have, when you add the, again, I'm probably getting into the weeds here for you, but when you move that 6th grade off those current teachers' schedules and you put them on their schedules now, there is a block of time that they're still open in their day that would more than likely be either to keep them full-time. We're talking these particular teachers, and the art, because currently the art does some interventions, I believe, at the middle school. The net wash is about $10,000. Pulling things off one schedule and putting them on another. But I need to take those. We can go one of 2 ways. We could have another teacher teach that one section of 2nd grade. That just doesn't make sense from a perspective of all the teachers, all the classes in 2nd grade have one art teacher, and this one class has a different. So if we pull that off their 6th grade course schedule and give that time to the teachers to teach the 5th section of 2nd grade. Currently, these teachers are being compensated, I believe it's 1.03 FT. They're a little over full FT because they're actually missing part of their prep time in their normal work day. So we're compensating them beyond their day for that missed prep time. So when you take that time away, because now they're just going to be 1.0, and you do the schedule and the shifts, it's about $10,000. The other factor that who's the actual person? A person at the top end, it's going to cost a lot more than a person who may be at the lower end of the pay scale. Okay.
I have a question about the buses. So
Question of buses?
Yeah, about the buses. When you, when they're done being in service, like you're getting rid of them,
Do you have, like, do we auction them to like a salvage? Do we,
No.
do we offset that cost?
We auction them, they typically get about, at that point, by the wear and tear, and the, what was the last one, 7,500?
Yeah, okay, not much.
It's not a large value.
And now the scrap rate has gone down, so we're not even expecting that much at this
Okay.
point. Because the metal, scrap metal, the value has decreased.
But the $100,000 number is the total cost, not including deducting the 7,500 or whatever.
No,
it was.
it's a ballpark, depending
Okay.
on when we bid. Like, for instance, sometimes we've gotten a bus, because of the bidding at the right time, was about 81,000. When you add on top of that, the radio and all the cameras and all the other stuff, we start creeping towards 90. One of the buses we bought was around 90, so when you start adding, we're closer to 100. Depends on, and we usually go with the state bid for our buses, which will be coming in, actually, there will be a bus purchase coming to you relatively soon, in order to get it ordered now for next year, because it takes at least 6 months lead time.
I had the same question for the technology replacement and upgrade. Is that upgrade of existing computers and then adding new computers?
It's computers and infrastructure is the dollar value. So for instance, the switches that we purchased in the 2013 bond, the switches that are available now are much, have a higher capacity that we can put in. So when this bond's over, those switches are going to be 10 years old. So we need to be looking at replacing those switches. We just replaced the middle school laptops at the beginning of this year. There was a purchase, I believe, in August that the board approved, and the 6th through 8 laptops were replaced. We need to replace, we're allowing more on a one-to-one where students can bring their technology to high school, but we're going to need to replace the elementary. There is funds in the second series of the bond for technology. And that's why I put it as it needs to be on your radar, because when those funds are gone, we do not have a replacement built into the budget for a future board to be able to purchase and upgrade the computer. These computers out here were put in the 13 bond. So they're already, well, they were probably purchased in the 14. So they're already 6 years old, some of the computers that were put in. And even the elementary, when we created that second lab, the second lab was older computers that were repurposed. There was one lab that was replaced. So that's what that dollar value is, to begin setting aside whether you target a grade level, whether you target this year, we're going to replace desktop teacher stations. Next year, we're going to start doing a certain grade levels of laptop. There needs to be a funnel or a source, because at some point that technology is going to need to be replaced. You look at the smart board or the smart projectors, it's not smart projector, the projector systems in the middle school and high school, those are going on 6 years old right now. The elementary smart boards, we replaced many of the cameras in the ceiling several years. I think there was like 19 of them we replaced, but the bulbs are very expensive. And many districts are going to a different technology, more of an interactive, I call it TV screen, rather than a smart board, like an 85-inch TV. Other questions on the expenses? Okay, let's start looking at revenue. Based on an enrollment estimate that we just talked about, if we assume that enrollment figure, all of the figures going forward are based on that projection. If we got nothing from the state, because we have a per pupil decrease in what we're budgeting FT, we would actually have a reduction in about $95,000 in revenue. It's an election year. I highly doubt that we're going to get nothing. But anything's possible in the state of Michigan. We never thought we'd get a 470 cut right in the middle of the year, but we all did. So what I did was I put up there a $60 per pupil increase, 120, 180, 240, and 300. The governor's budget called for Richmond to have a 225 per pupil increase in her budget.
The House and Senate have not released theirs yet. But a 240 increase is a 2.9% increase in the foundation, and would generate about $251,000 in additional revenue based on the projected enrollment. And you can see the corresponding values for the 60, 120, 180. For some reason, when they give allocations, it's typically the $60 increment from the state. I have no reason or understanding why. So when you take those increases, and you look at what we just talked about as the expenses, you can see here where we are as our structural problem. So for instance, if we assume $240, and just for the sake of discussion, I'm going to assume $240. Our next several weeks conversation, if take the enhancement millage out of the equation at the moment, would be we need to reduce expenses by about $312,000. Again, based on those assumptions, we could assume not filling that second grade position until we, like we did last year. So there's a lot of things we can do, but right now, if we want to continue everything as is going forward, plus these known expenses that we do know about, we need to figure out a reduction of $312,000. Now I'm going to put on it tomorrow, and I've talked about it a couple times, and it's been probably seen on social media and as well as on, I haven't seen any advertisements on TV, but the enhancement millage. I use the figure 575. A 2 mil increase is about $595,000 for the district. So I just went low because I'm not sure where market values of houses are going to be, et cetera, taxable values. It could be closer to 600,000. It could be 575. If you add on this enhancement millage, if passed by the voters, would provide Richmond an additional $575,000 in revenue that the board has you guys can decide how that's allocated. So if you look at that enhancement millage and you take this structural problem, and again I'll use a 240, 312, add on the 575, we actually have $262,000 in revenue not accounted for an expense. So in this case, our revenue would exceed our expenses. And again, there's just various scenarios. As I mentioned, the budget process is a fluid document. Until we know the final numbers at the end of the year, that structural problem is going to go up and down. We could have something serious happen that is not covered by the bond that we're going to have to assume out of the general fund in this process. These are some things to think about as the board. If the millage passed, you automatically have a contractual obligation of about $17,000. That's going to come into the budget if at the end of the day tomorrow we know the millage passed. We've had parents come up here all the time. You could choose with using this enhancement millage to eliminate pay to participate. Again, there's a lot you have options there. You could, as I mentioned in the last board meeting, we still have employees that have made concessions. You could begin making them whole, depending on the dollar value. You could look at putting in a set dollar amount. And again, this is just a starting point. It could be more or less to build that bus replacement, to build technology and upgrades and replacement. Questions on the revenue side? So, the real budget discussion, I believe, is going to happen on the 23rd board meeting, because we're going to know whether this passes or not. If the enhancement millage does pass, we have to go down one road because we'll have to figure out what we're going to be accountable for the public for those dollars. If the enhancement doesn't pass, we know we're going to have approximately about a $300,000 in this model of a structural problem that we're going to have to resolve going into next school year. My plan is, depending on the election tomorrow, If the millage does not pass, then I will be presenting you by function code options that you have to consider. And I'm just going to throw out an example. You could eliminate in function 111, we could reduce class size. 111 is elementary school. Or excuse me, we could increase that, not put in that second grade. You could eliminate some allocations that are there for curriculum. Our plan was to bring to you the social studies for a July 1 purchase. If we eliminate those dollars, there's a savings you could do, go there. You could go up to transportation, which is 271, and you could reduce some costs, but you could change runs. You could look at changing field trip costs. That could generate you a whole lot of dollars. But I'm going to give you by function code. Here are what's in that function code, and here are some options that you have. We are a people organization. We do not have, when you look at the big picture of our budget that you approved in February, we don't have a lot of supply dollars to cut our way out of this. So you will be looking at reducing programs, services for kids and potentially staff, or eliminating certain things. There are certain things you have to do because you have a contractual obligation, such as we have to provide so many minutes of prep for teachers. And the way we do that in this district and most districts is we provide specials to provide release time. If you were to say, all right, we're going to cut X, I still got to provide that 15 minutes of prep time to teachers in some fashion. So it's not a net savings you're going to gain. So that will be my plan for going forward, is to look at if the enhancement millage does not pass, I need to provide you that list of function codes to look through and begin making decisions. Questions?
No. All right, thank you. Moving on is our bond update, Mr. Walmsley.
Okay, bond update. Monday, we are, tomorrow, we have our bond meeting, which is going to start finalizing the elementary drawings. We're actually going to be looking through all the elementary drawings to make sure what was been discussed about during the bond core meetings is in the drawings. Last week, it's about 2 weeks now, at our bond meeting, we talked about the reconfiguration of parking lots and bus loops. They are in the process of right now, here's what we are thinking. Now they're looking at putting a price to it to make sure it's within the scope of the bond. One of the concepts that we're looking at in the elementary, in the bond scope, we knew we were expanding the parking lot, and on the rough drawings, we had that parking lot by the soccer fields. Would it make sense to move the bus loop and maybe have the bus loop be in the front of the building and the parent drop-off be part of the parking lot on the side of the elementary school? So if you envision where that bus loop is, that in essence becomes the parking lot with the road going around the parking lot, so we won't necessarily have the need for a crossing guard there, trying to stop traffic and people crossing. So we're looking at those ways. One of the concepts we looked at was looking at it was conceptually how to minimize the problems that we've had in each of the locations and how to maximize their dollars in parking lot. So we've done that part, and really tomorrow is the finalization of the elementary. Those will then go out to bid for you to approve, I believe, at the beginning of May, a contract with the construction. After tomorrow, the next building is the middle school that we will start. We'll be working on the middle school and high school simultaneously, but we're going to start on the middle school next. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the portion of our meeting for public comment. If someone would like to address the board, they can come up to the podium. There is should be a sheet of paper. If you leave your name and number with us, if you have a question that you want answered. You have 3 minutes to speak. While it is not a question and answer session between the board and the public, but if there is an issue, someone will get back with you. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Okay, moving on. Lexi.
So, starting off at the Lee School, March 11th is the preschool roundup at 5:30, and the next day, March 12th, is the kindergarten roundup also at 5:30. The PTO Science Night is March 19th, and the PTO Pastries with Parents is March 23rd. The Green Club Art Show is March 24th, and students and staff are enjoying the jungle-themed March's Reading Month. Some of their themed days include dressing in animal print, reading to a stuffed animal or pet, Crazy Sock Day, and bringing a flashlight into school to read in the dark. Moving to middle school, their Odyssey of the Mind will compete this Saturday at Melvindale for the state competition. The RMS band performed at festival during a snow day at Anchor Bay on the 28th. They performed very well despite missing 3 days of practice. The RMS Book Fair was a success, with special thanks to Miss Amber Jackson for taking it all on. And conferences last week were well attended. The Title I Family Game Night went great last week, and the RMS is currently in the middle of their WIDA testing. Lastly, at the high school, we had a lot of amazing things happening at the high school this past few weeks. Last Friday, the band performed at the MSBOA District 16 Band Festival at Anchor Bay. They earned a first division rating on stage and sight reading, which is great for them. DECA competed at the state finals this past weekend, and we now have 2 individuals who qualify to move on to the national level. The robotics team placed first in their first competition of the year in Southfield. And I also know that mock trial competed. I'm not quite sure how they did, but I know that was something that they were really preparing for the whole year too. In addition, RHS has been very busy the last 2 weeks, going all over the state, including Detroit, Jackson, Kalamazoo, and Grand Rapids. The high school teams all gave great performances in bowling, wrestling, and cheer. The wrestling team had many individual champions, with Luke Davis being the #1 state individual champion. Cheer earned a team state championship, making it back-to-back for them because they were also state championships last year, so that was a huge accomplishment for them. And lastly, 55 17-year-olds will be taking the NAEP test in reading and math on March 18th. This test is given nationally to determine education progress on a national level. And that is all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Lexi? No. Thank you. Next, superintendent and legislative update.
That assessment Lexi talked about, we were selected, we were lucky enough to be selected by the Department of Education at the federal level to administer that assessment. So it's one of the many that will be administered over the next couple of weeks. So, as Lexi said, the robotics team, they have their open house this Wednesday. I would encourage everybody, if you can attend, from 5 to 7. The robot is really cool this year. So it's cool every year, but I think it's pretty cool this year. You enter through door 5, which is down by the area where they build the robotics. I mean, just the excitement among the team and the students and the parents. It's fascinating and really cool to watch. Class of 2034 and 2035, as Lexi said, is the roundup this Wednesday. If you have not registered, you can still register, or you can walk in. So right now we have 55 preschoolers and 159 family members planning to attend on Wednesday's preschool roundup. Thursday will be the class of 2033, the kindergarten roundup. Again, at 5:30 we'll serve dinner. We currently have, as of today, 52 kindergartners scheduled to attend and 161 family members will be there. So if any of the board members can make it that night, please just stop in and see our future Blue Devils. The Michigan Department of Education has chosen Richmond to do an on-site audit of our federal and state programs, of our Title I program, which is a federal at-risk program, our Title II program, which is a federal professional development, basically our funds are used for, Title III English Learner program, Section 31A, which is the state at-risk program, and Title V, which is the school safety program, which is our liaison officers currently paid out of that fund. I do want to give a special shout out and thank you to the building administrative teams, and I know that it consists not only of the principals but also the teachers and school improvement chairs, because it's a lot of work putting the documentation together. Section 31A, some of the documentation had to be submitted 2 weeks ago. Some they'll look at when they come on site. They'll spend tomorrow on site at the building level, and then Wednesday will be at the district level and looking at district protocols. Now the building administrators team, a special thank you to Mrs. Lashbrook, who's kind of the point person and been communicating back and forth with the state. Right when she started the position, she kind of jumped in, and she has done nothing but wonderful things regarding it. As I reported to you, I'm happy to report that through the partnership with the REA and Teresa Ranger, the president over there, we have a tentative agreement on the calendar for next year. So I do appreciate the efforts for that on the REA's part to get that out to our community. It is online for parents to download on the website. Both calendars are there. The detailed calendar is not there yet for next year because we haven't put those dates in for all the other things that are on there, such as homecoming and snow coming and all the other stuff that we put on the details, different plays, etc. From the legislature, no news, I guess is good news at this point, from the legislators. I talked to you last time about the conversation about the flexibility on Senate Bill 171, which allows students to not take a second year of foreign language if they complete a CTE. It's moving through the process. It has not been signed into law. It was approved several years ago with a sunset clause expiring with the class of 2024, which would be this year's 9th graders. So this year's 8th graders, next year's 9th graders will be back to having a 2-year foreign language requirement. So it's anticipated that this will pass, but as of right now, it is we're back to our current 8th graders having 2 consecutive years of foreign language. House Bill 5357 talked about allowing retirees to return to work. Several years of return to work in public schools. Several years, the law was put into place that if you retired in the district, you could not come back to work in a school district, especially in a third party like subbing and so forth. They are realizing the laws that they have passed. I don't know if they're realizing, but we are reaping the benefits or lack of benefits of the laws they passed of a teacher shortage. When you look at the amount of teachers leaving the education programs in the universities, it's about half of what it was just 10 years ago. There are certain areas that we cannot find people to hire. So this is an attempt by the legislators to allow those that retired who may want to come back into the profession to be able to come back into the profession, but yet not lose their retirement benefits. We'll see where that goes. Senate Bill 657 would allow special education teachers to receive an interim teaching certificate to allow them to teach in public schools without going through the traditional education certification. There are programs out there like Teach for America, et cetera, that give an alternate way to get a teaching certificate. Typically, it's never been allowed through a special ed endorsement. This bill would now allow others, so instead of going through a traditional teaching program, to allow people who want to get into special ed to earn their certificates. There's some concerns on this one. I personally have on this one, though all students need to have the best and highly qualified individuals. A special ed teacher needs to have a lot of training on how to deal with students with disabilities and so forth, and I don't know if just anybody can do it. So this one does concern not only myself, but it also concerns many of the organizations, such as the Michigan Association of School Boards and Administrators Association. House Bill 4483, they began hearings and it's going through the process to encourage districts to teach cursive writing. Some of the cost, there's a House bill that we're watching. They actually introduced 6 House bills that would remove the sales tax that goes to schools from the gasoline tax and instead put a new gasoline tax that would be solely devoted towards the roads. So basically, when you're at the pump, you're not going to pay any less than what you're paying now, but they are taking the sales tax. Where that is very problematic, the sales tax at the pump generates $850 million annually. The school aid gets most of its funding, 75% of that goes to the school aid. So that would be a hit to the school aid fund if they did this without a replacement to the school aid fund. And again, it's an attempt to find money for roads without raising taxes. So it's a shuffle of them. This is the one I would encourage everybody to please watch, because it's about a $600 million hole. With a lot of money to school aid. The other bill that we're watching is House Bill 5104. It's requiring water filtration devices to be installed in all public and private schools. Just so the community knows, we have had our water tested by an outside agency. Our water is fine. There's no our drinking water, but this would allow for every, basically for every water receptacle that you have to have a filtration system attached. The way the bill is currently written is districts would have to have a plan in place by August of 2020, which is in a couple months, and have all filters in place by 2021. And currently there is no money attached to this bill.
Of course.
As Lexi mentioned, March is Reading Month. We have various activities going on. Mr. Koshin, you want to just talk about what you're doing at the elementary school?
Yep, many things. Lexi did mention some of them. Some of the key points. Guest readers. It's always enjoyable having some guests come to our school. Mr. Walmsley was there last week for 3 days reading to all the classes. Mrs. Mangooni and I, we reading classes as our schedules allow. Board members, I know some board members will be showing up doing some reading. We have a lot of family members, parents, grandparents, always excited to come in. Next week we have Representative Paul Mitchell come in to read classes. We have our weekly minutes where students, parents keep track of the minutes the students read and turn those in each week. With those, we also have, if students are caught being outstanding readers, they get a ticket, and then they turn those in as a class, and then every Friday, I draw one student from each grade level, and those students come down to my office and pick out a book to get. We also have hallway and door decorations. The theme is jungle theme. So we see a lot of leaves and things. When students turn in their minutes, they can also get leaves to decorate outside the library, outside the classrooms. Students, when they turn in their reading minutes, they also get keychains with little tokens. This year, once again, there's animals. So I noticed today some students just got theirs because at lunchtime they were showing me all the little animals and some of the tokens. They got very excited about that. Also doing cash for koalas. So students or staff, they can donate $1 or more to go towards the disaster relief efforts for koalas in Australia. If you go by the music room, you'll see some little narratives that students wrote and some of the koalas that they get to color when they donate some money. So we also have a calendar that the March's Reading Month Committee put together. So all the highlights, about 3 times a week, there's some type of a theme. Today was dressing some animal print. Unfortunately for me, Monday I was thinking about animals or things like that, so I didn't get into the theme today. But wear a t-shirt you can read. Read about a leprechaun and wear green. So just something that ties into the theme, ties in, just get kids excited about reading. So I know the March's Reading Month Committee has been very busy planning all this, sent out packets to the families, to the teachers. So very well organized, and we have events going on all throughout the month. So everyone's welcome to come by anytime to see all the fun that we're having at the elementary with reading. We do have fun reading every day at the elementary, but this month just some little extra incentives and little fun things too this month.
And obviously based on the age of the kids, it varies at different levels. I don't know if Andy, Keith or Andy, if you want to talk about what.
Well, we're wild about reading as well. Mrs. Monroe has her friends down there at the elementary, and they've worked quite a bit on the same theme. We are also welcome to the jungle, and our 4th and 5th grade wing is really decorated in that. Ms. Nicolopoulos is decorating our library, jungle theme. We too are having a bunch of guest readers throughout the month. That's all being run by Miss Monroe. We have themes. The one thing I like that they're doing is they're pushing, I think the glasses out here, they're pushing some things to do at home, to push literacy with brothers and sisters, their moms and dads. So like try at home, listen to a book online, try at home, read to a friend, try at home, play a board game, read the directions, try at home, read about a pet you'd like to own. Parents might not like that one, but try at home, read to a friend again, and then read one of your special places, and then a bunch of other themes throughout the week. And then we finish with a readathon. I believe we're doing coconut bowling. I'm a 300 golf or bowler, so I challenge any kid in school. But that's going to be fun to do coconut bowling with the kids. On the St. Patrick's Day, we're doing a carousel during our activity period. We are doing our in-house talent show, our pie eating contest, because 3.14, which is actually Saturday. We're going to celebrate that on St. Patty's Day, and then also a March Reading Month activity. So the different groups will rotate through the different events all on Tuesday, as well as wearing green. So we're pretty excited. We're going to read to the classes as well.
In the high school, our focus is to try to get the students to read something that's not on their phones. So kind of the theme is instead of Netflix, it's Bookflix. Instead of Facebook, it's Face-a-Book. Trying to get them to do something that's not with their head cranked over looking at it. So one of the things we did is we had each staff member give us a recommendation for their favorite book or their favorite thing that they like to read. And Mrs. Schlachowitz is in the process of, I don't think she's quite done, making a bulletin board that has all of the staff members' recommendations for them so the kids can see that. We'll be sharing those in the announcements. The other thing that is every Friday we do our Code Blues, and our Code Blue winners that come down for their outstanding behavior are also going to be sharing their favorite book and their reading recommendation on the PA. And then the final thing we're going to try to do to get the kids excited is on Fridays as well. Ms. Borwick and I are going to pick selected top secret passages from certain books and read that passage during the morning announcements, and then whatever kids can come down with the correct answer of the from that excerpt that day, we'll get a prize. We thought that was a great idea, then we realized that there is the internet, and most likely the kids are just going to Google those. So I'm going to try to make them as obscure and difficult as possible, and we'll make them figure out how they prove that to us. Darn internet's ruining everything.
And just the last thing I have is on March 19th, Richmond will be hosting a town hall meeting regarding opiates, and encourage families to come and bring your student. This is, as you've heard in the media, this is a crisis among our young people particularly, and we're trying to educate not only our students but also parents in this. So it will be at Richmond High School. I thank Mrs. Warwick for spearheading this and getting this. She partnered, I think it was with Mr. Day, and the two of them together came up with this date and so forth. So it should be a good event. And then lastly is on April 2nd is the budget that the ISD will be approving. So as a board, you'll need to be able to select a representative at the next meeting to attend that and hearing. You'll come back. I know we have a board representative, so we just need to make sure that if that's the person we're going to do, that they are able to attend, because they'll need to go to the meeting, come back and report, and then eventually the board will have to pass a resolution in favor of opposing the ISD's budget. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Next, items of interest from members of the board. We're going to start, it is March's reading month, and board members read, as do administrators and administrative staff. So we've brought either our favorite book we're reading right now, or we're going to talk about a book. So our administrators have joined in, so I'll start down there at the end with Mr. Koshin.
The book I'm currently reading for professional and personal reasons, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk. So this is a good book as it looks at what you say to kids, what they're actually thinking and what they're hearing, which just puts in different perspective. One part I read recently, for example, is a student may ask a question instead of we're used to it as educators, as parents, giving them the answer right away. Is what to kind of change that and then ask them the question. So have them kind of come up with the answer instead of us just automatically telling them what the answer is. Also, instead of just saying no, kind of giving them choices. So instead of saying no, you can't have ice cream right now, you can say, well, we're going to have dinner first, and then you can choose to have ice cream, or you can choose this or choose that, so kind of give them some choices. And from personal experience, I will say that this is much easier with students at school that are 6, 7 years old than with my 18-year-old daughter. So that is personal experience. So it's good because I think about how to interact with students at school, adults at school, and I have shared some things with teachers also about some things I've read in here. So it's good for professional and personal purposes.
Thank you.
Mine is personal. It's the third book I've read from Joel Osteen. Think a lot of him and love his books and just his outlook on life. This one is called Think Better, Live Better. And what I like in this book is he talks about your mind like a computer, and it's a lot easier said than done. He is so positive, but that you hit the delete button on negativity and just keep thinking positive, and pretty inspirational.
My book is called In Harm's Way, and I actually had it, and my dad came over this weekend, and as a 30-year English teacher, I think he took it and took it back to Clarkston with him to read it, so I'm going to have to get him. It's called In Harm's Way, and it's the story of the USS Indianapolis. As an ex-history teacher, I'm constantly reading more historical biographies. If you know anything about the Indianapolis, it was the ship that delivered the nuclear weapons to the Pacific and then was sunk on the way back to America without giving an SOS signal. So just over 1,000 men went into the ocean. It's a story of how they survived and overcame, spending almost a week in the Pacific Ocean while they were eaten alive by sharks, for lack of a better term. You might know it in popular, from Jaws, the movie Jaws, when they're in the boat, he's telling the story of the Indianapolis. That's what actually got me interested in it. The part I really take from it is how split-second decisions can have long-lasting outcomes, and then kind of living with the guilt of being a survivor. So very interesting from a history standpoint for me.
I was cleaning house with my daughters over the weekend. They are both home from college or done with college, so we have boxes of books, and one of them I pulled out is called Common Sense by Thomas Paine. I'd never read it, so I thought I would read it. Apparently it's still useful. They had to read it in school. It's just a nice book. It's written in an old style, so we don't talk the way it's written. So it's a little more challenging, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm almost done. But it was published as a pamphlet in early 1776, and it's about all the reasons the American colonies should separate and leave the British monarchy. So it's great.
Well, I'm not reading anything currently, but the last thing I read, I'm a big music fan, so I read the autobiography of Keith Richards. It's pretty interesting. I also read a series of short stories about, it's called The Road to Transplant. My mom needed a heart transplant, so I read this book. It had various short stories from people that went through the whole experience, so it's pretty interesting.
I had to read Common Sense for Government, and I think it's still assigned to this day, but yeah, it's really interesting. That one makes you look at government definitely differently. The one that I brought is called Queen of Air and Darkness. It's by Cassandra Clare, who she's probably my favorite author at the moment. And it's every fantasy lover's dream, which that's my favorite genre to read. And it's got everything that you could want in a fantasy novel with angels, demons, vampires, werewolves, warlocks, fairies, and it sounds like a lot, but the way that she writes in all of the different characters and how they're all just there to protect each other, and the whole theme of good versus evil throughout the novel is just very captivating and entertaining. So, love that book.
I would like to say that I just need to aspire to be as good a reader as Alexis.
I love to read.
This would take me probably 2 whole years to read. My book I got for Christmas, and I am just starting it. It is The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. It is a true story, and I am looking forward to getting into it, because that obviously, the change in our country's history, if it had been successful, would have been a huge impact.
I am mostly reading a lot of board policy, a lot of old meeting minutes, but I did recently start a book, not quite as serious as everybody else. It's called Lottery, and it's about just basically like a normal blue-collar family, and just like the trials and tribulations that they kind of go through on a daily basis. I really just started it, so that's all I got.
My book is Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. It is about the Harvey Weinstein and the NBC studios for the things that happened. Ronan Farrow is the reporter. He worked for NBC News who investigated and basically got things to roll to happen to get Harvey Weinstein put behind bars where he belongs. But it is a really, really good book, and it is amazing to me what people do to lie and abuse people and think that they can get away with it because they have power. And you know, Harvey Weinstein, he hired Mossad people that followed Ronan Farrow around wanting to kill him and other people, the women that were telling their stories about him. So it's a tremendous read. It's weird to say that it's a tremendous read, but it really is very impactful.
Well, I read, I had quite a bit of time between my daughter's dance recital Sunday, so I read this book called Learning from Lincoln. It's called Leadership Practices in School, and it basically, it's actually a very quick read, surprisingly. I thought it was going to be a lot more. But it takes about the historical documents and Lincoln's leadership abilities and applies them into school settings. And so I found it pretty fascinating that some of the stuff, because he's one of my favorite historical figures to learn about.
I read a book that I just started reading with my son. It's The Adventures of Bear Grylls. So it's called The River Challenge. So each book focuses on a different fear that a child might have, such as swimming or heights or anything like that, and then they learn how to overcome that challenge. And Bear Grylls is the survivalist on TV. So it's cool that the kids can relate to actually seeing him doing these survival skills on TV and learn them stuff. So it's a really cool series by Kane Miller. It's a foreign book.
Very cool.
I forgot my book, but, and I don't get to finish books a lot during the school year, mostly in the summer, but one book I would recommend, which I read years ago, is a Joyce Meyer book called I Dare You. It's about finding your passion and living life. Living life with your passion. So.
All right. I challenge myself to try and read a book every month. I'm one of those people that has a Goodreads account and log my books, challenge myself. I finished a book last night. It's called Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, and it was very good. I won't spoil it for anybody who has not read it yet, but it is a psychological thriller. It deals with drug addiction, depression, and agoraphobic, death and survival and overcoming things. And actually, A.J. Finn is, he writes from his heart because he also suffered from some of those same things of depression and drug addiction and things of that nature. So it is very good. And then I started James Patterson Ambush this weekend as well. So I don't have any one genre that I like more than another. I try to flip between some different ones, but I encourage people to read all the time because it really does give you a creative escape.
The book I chose to read was The Gunslinger by Stephen King. It's the first book in the Dark Tower series that consists of 9 books. I just started about halfway through. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of March. This is actually one of the first fiction books sci-fi probably about 10 years, so it's been kind of fun to check out and enjoy that a little bit. And it just kind of is based on, it actually covers 3 different genres and more, sci-fi, fantasy, and a little bit of Western. And it just goes through the story of the main character Roland starts there, and he's on a quest to find the Dark Tower and, you know, save the world, for, you know, lack of better words. And he enters all kinds of different traps, following the Black Man, and on different adventures. And I'm excited to see and forward to reading the rest of the series.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, everybody. It's good to be able to share it. Chris, I read that book. It is a fabulous book, and they're making it into a movie as well.
I can see
Yes,
that.
yes. So thank you to everyone who joined with the board to do that tonight. We appreciate it. I just want, Nick Mathis was in here before the meeting talking, and just to throw a little more robotics out there, he shared with Mr. Walmsley and I that our robotics team is ranked 25th in the world and number 3 in the state of Michigan. So that is a really, really cool thing for Nick and everybody that's involved. Yes, you are right. We have that hearing at the ISD. It is April 2nd at 6:30. I know, Angela, you went last year.
I've gone twice.
Yeah, I've gone a few times myself. I cannot go April 2nd. So if there is someone who's interested in, by the next meeting, if you just let me know, because I think we have to notify the ISD who's coming, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? No. Okay. Moving on, looking for a motion to go into closed session. There's a sample resolution.
Pursuant to Section 8C of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purposes of negotiations.
Support.
Sherry, was that you?
Yes.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are going into closed session, and we will be coming back out to vote. Session at 8:58. I am looking for our next action item, looking for a motion to approve. Did I say 8:58?
Yes.
8:48, thank you. Looking for a motion for approval of the administrative contract.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve a 2-year contract to expire on June 30th, 2020 between Richmond Community Schools and administrators, Teamsters, state, county, and municipal workers, Local 214, as outlined in the attached documentation.
Support. Sherry, that was you. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Angela.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Jessica.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned at